It's Dina and Lisa Graves, and you're on Legal AF. Attorney General Pam Bondi was questioned during the Senate hearing about whether or not she was ethically pursuing cases or not pursuing cases. And this was her response. Take a listen.
Are you firing career prosecutors solely because they worked on cases like January 6th that the president doesn't like?
Senator Hirono, I am not going to talk about personnel matters with you.
Well, we all know that hundreds of career prosecutors have left the DOJ, and literally hundreds, we're told.
Senator, are you familiar with the one that threw a sandwich at an ICE officer? Are you a Homeland Security officer? Are you familiar with the one who went out on her lunch break and was making obscene gestures?
Would you say that DOJ losing these career prosecutors and the thousands of hours of experience they have prosecuting criminals, that is not a reassuring situation?
So her outrage that somehow a senator who has oversight over something like this dared question her about her ethics is, let's say, laughable, considering who she's, Trump and who she was appointed by and how, frankly, the DOJ has been carrying this out. Let's specifically talk about the fact that although she can't even be questioned about the ethics and seems to be, indicting people such as Comey unethically, the career prosecutors in her office seem to be maintaining their own ethics. We have some new reporting showing that the prosecutor who was assigned to evidently prosecute or investigate whether or not to prosecute New York Attorney General Letitia James, according to some MSNBC reporting, Elizabeth Yusi, who was overseeing this, she oversees the major criminal division in the Eastern District of Virginia, which now has acting head Lindsey Halligan, because as we know, the prior one stepped aside because they were unwilling to prosecute Comey. Well, this Elizabeth Yusi evidently has told coworkers that she plans on not prosecuting Attorney General Letitia James because of the lack of evidence. We also see that the acting head, Lindsey Halligan, has had to recruit prosecutors from outside her office to continue the prosecution of James Comey, because evidently the career prosecutors in her office are not doing so. These career prosecutors having some ethics, some backbone, some courage, Attorney General Pam Bondi seemingly having none and being outraged by the mere questioning of it. Lisa, your entire your body of work, let's say, is all about ethics.
Part of it is about judicial ethics, but it's also about the Justice Department and the system of justice. Yes.
So, what do you make of this?
Well, listening to the hearing with Bondi testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee, I was astonished, although I suppose nothing should shock me anymore, but still I was astonished by the just outright contempt Bondi conveyed. Her response to questions by members of Congress, by senators about legitimate issues, about the actions of the Justice Department, about the actions of this administration. She was the embodiment of contempt, of contemptuousness. And the taking umbrage at fair questions about how this Justice Department has been redirected from its primary objectives, its primary role in our system as an impartial prosecutor, into being a partisan prosecutor doing the bidding of Donald Trump. It's extraordinary. And quite frankly, her testimony, or her appearance really before the Judiciary Committee, comes on the heels of what looked like a direct message, a DM that was made public, in essence, accidentally perhaps, by Donald Trump, telling her a few weeks ago they needed to start prosecuting his enemies. And Trump has said as much a number of times, but in that case, he was basically saying just a couple weeks ago, like, get on it. Here we are. It's September, October. Where are the indictments of the people I don't like, the people I want prosecuted? That's extraordinary. The Justice Department has not played that role. The last time we had a president who was trying to direct the Justice Department to manipulate the criminal justice system was Richard M. Nixon. And he resigned in disgrace after revelations of, his efforts to direct the prosecutors to protect himself and to direct the firing of the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox, in that instance. As you point out, Dina, here we are where we have the head of the Justice Department who is basically saying, this isn't political. This is a person who has been, briefed Trump about the fact that he was named repeatedly in the Epstein files, and then lo and behold, they're not going to release them. This is someone who previously worked as Trump's defense attorney in one of the impeachment trials. This is someone whose PAC took money from Donald Trump when, as state attorney general, she was charged with investigating fraud allegations regarding Trump University. In that instance, the referrals for investigation resulted in fines because of that, conflict of interest, what was going on there as a prosecutor. And she, in this Judiciary Committee hearing, talked about how she's always been a prosecutor. Well, that's not even true. She was a state assistant state attorney prosecutor when she first began her career. Then she began a political career to become the Attorney General of Florida, the state Attorney General. But in between there, she also represented a business interest in Qatar, foreign entities who had an array of interests, big financial interests. And then she ultimately became super tied to Donald Trump in his quest for not just his actions during the first Trump term, but also his quest for power coming into the second term by working as an advisor to one of the America First legal group that was, an adjutant for Donald Trump and his extreme agenda. So she's not impartial, and she's certainly not behaving impartially. But let's talk a bit about Lindsey Halligan some more. And can you share some of your thoughts in response to what's been reported, Dina?
Yeah, I mean, obviously she is a political appointee in every sense of the word. So in the Senate hearing, we saw Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, we saw Senator Dick Durbin just asking these excellent questions. One of them asked about the picture of Attorney General Pam Bondi sitting right next to basically Trump, right? President of the United States, right before the indictment of James Comey, right after Trump basically directed her to indict Comey. As we know, that is not the president is not supposed to direct the attorney general about prosecutorial matters. And so it was a very good question, very reasonable question. Did you discuss the Comey indictment? And of course, she refused to answer. And Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is always right there with the questioning of ethics, especially with the Supreme Court. He has done so much to amplify that conversation, move the conversation around. And I think you should be so proud that your book, which I have a copy of, you're going to have to sign this for me at some point when we see each other in person, has, a blurb by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. The praise he is giving you, Lisa Graves is a dazzling, brilliant sleuth. Fantastic. I mean, I think you can have a bucket list. If you have a bucket list item, this should definitely be a check to have somebody whose career is so about ethics to praise you in your tell-all here of the book and the ethics. So tell me what your take here on this, everything that came to light.
Well, that's right. And one of the responses to that indictment of James Comey, that extraordinary indictment of him, is that this is selective prosecution, and selective prosecution is something that is barred at the state level. At the federal level, it's something that's not allowed. You can't just selectively prosecute your enemies. In essence, that's an abuse of the power of the prosecutor. That would be an abuse of the Justice Department. And in this instance, it seems quite clear that this is exactly what's going on. You had Trump's first appointee to be the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Seibert, refusing to pursue that indictment because it's such it was unfounded, and it was so problematic to be pursuing someone who is a stated enemy of Donald Trump, someone who served as the director of the FBI, someone who served as deputy attorney general Comey is someone who I think a lot of people rightly remember that actually Comey sort of tipped the scales in favor of Trump during that 2016 election because he announced on election eve that there was an investigation into Hillary Clinton and the email servers. Meanwhile, we've had, revelation after revelation of Trump and emails and communications that, have been, problematic. But in essence, Donald Trump is trying to use this to relitigate the whole absurd claim that there's a Russia hoax, when in fact, the reality is that under our national security laws, and I used to be the senior legislative strategist for the ACLU on national security issues when Comey was Deputy Attorney General before he became the Director of FBI, when Mueller was the Director of the FBI. And the reality is that our national security agency, the NSA, and our intelligence operations are directed predominantly and by law to monitoring foreign nationals abroad, like leaders of other countries and their spies and their operatives. And when they're monitoring those communications of, Russian ambassadors, and those Russian ambassadors happen to call people who are in the Trump campaign, the agencies aren't targeting the Trump campaign. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is gathering intelligence about America's opponents and our allies to determine what our national security interests are. And so when someone is picked up on those communications, that's an inadvertent, they're not targeted. But what Trump has tried to do is sort of turn that investigation into a crime when in fact it was well grounded. And all of the intelligence agencies in that 2016 election, noted that there was obvious Russian interference, efforts to interfere in that presidential election. And in fact, Trump invited interference by saying, hey, wouldn't it be great, Russia, if you got Hillary's emails and shared them with the public? Please do that. That'd be great. So this attack on Comey is twisted in so many ways, including a twisting of the facts, because the reality is that Comey's statements, which he didn't reveal on the eve of the election, that there were communications between Trump campaign officials and Russian agents. Instead, he said, they looked into Hillary Clinton and they found, not sufficient wrongdoing to, pursue a claim. That, I think, helped tilt that election for Trump. But that's not enough for Trump because he demands loyalty, not loyalty to the Constitution, but loyalty to him. And so, as you pointed out, Dina, after the U.S. attorney that Trump chose refused to indict Comey, Trump chose Lindsey Halligan, who was acting as deputy staff secretary at the White House, the same role, by the way, that Brett Kavanaugh had in the George W. Bush White House, very political position. He put a person who had basically experienced predominantly doing like insurance litigation, not that there's anything wrong with it, but no actual prosecutorial experience, in charge of the Eastern District of Virginia. And then, as you point out, that's not all. She is someone who cannot apparently find actual career prosecutors within that office to prosecute Comey under these, this sort of trumped up charges in a way, a manner of speaking. So she's reaching out to outside people to prosecute him. Everything about this is extraordinary, unusual, and flies in the face of the long-standing separation between the White House and a political objective of a president and the administration of justice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And as soon as Democrats are back in office, there was a slew of laws that got passed after Nixon. Most of the laws, frankly, like the Administrative Procedures Act, which we saw the basis of basically every lawsuit the Democrats filed, was enacted after Nixon. We need the same version. Trump is showing us where we are lacking in our laws. A lot was handshake, let's say, or expectations. People were expecting a president to act a certain way, and now we need to codify it. We have to create more laws. And I think there was a movement even and that was part of the questioning too, is there's a senator who wants to codify the DOJ policies. It's just a practice. It's a policy. So let's enforce it. That's what we're going to need, more of enforcing it. We will keep you updated on all the latest here. Lisa Graves and I breaking down just this little segment of the hearings and the ethics and the DOJ and what we're hearing right now. But be sure to hit the free subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can stay tuned for all of these many developments.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dina. I so appreciate being on with you.
Oh my gosh, love it too. And if you haven't already, be sure to pick up Lisa's new book.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.